Hello everyone, in this video we'll be continuing to incorporate even more agile project management techniques and concepts into our waterfall project management structure. We will be covering the executing phase, and with that we will be reviewing Scrum Sprints. The cyclical nature of agile project management within the sequential waterfall project management approach should be at least a little bit clearer after today's video. So let's start out with the executing phase. What's included in this video? First, we'll define what the executing phase is. Next, we'll talk about sprints and how they address development in a different way than traditional waterfall project management. We will then talk about how this flow actually occurs within the standard events included in a sprint. Lastly, we will wrap up the video by tying in our agile processes to our waterfall structure. Before we jump in, we need to review our hybrid project management model. We are at the executing phase where the bulk of our agile methods, the one with the blue background, are incorporated. We have all 4 Scrum events included in this phase, and that assists us in transitioning out of the planning phase with the inclusion of user stories. As we complete user stories, it feeds into the controlling phase and subsequently the closing phase. This helps us transition out of the executing phase as well. But what is the executing phase? This is probably our most straightforward phase within our model. The definition from the Project Management Institute articulates this perfectly. Carrying out the plan. This is where the product is coded, the systems are integrated, the database is created, or whatever work needs to get done is completed. Mainly, this phase focuses on Scrum Sprints and its cycle of designing and developing bite-sized items and then repeating that process. We've talked a lot about Scrum Sprints without completely defining them, so let's rectify that. Scrum Sprints are 1 to 4 week increments in which a set of work is completed. This set of work all focuses on a specific goal called the sprint goal. This goal can be something as ambiguous as improve the speed of the website, or it can be something more concrete like finish the user interface for the admin dashboard. Sprints also include a set of meetings or events that help facilitate the development and move everyone in the same direction towards the sprint goal. Along with these events are artifacts or documents that assist in organizing and coordinating the activities of the sprint. The user stories from the planning phase are included in the current sprint, a future sprint, or the overall repository of user stories not assigned yet, and that's called the backlog. Typically, future sprints are planned just before they happen, as the nature of requirements and priorities of the work can rapidly change in most IT environments. Depending on how quickly requirements change, an adept product manager can use shorter or longer sprints. However, the length of the sprint should remain consistent over time and not change very much from sprint to sprint. We've discussed what comprises a sprint, but we haven't talked about the individual events yet. Depending on the team, a mix of a few different types of meetings can be used. In our model, we have included the Backlog Refinement meeting, Sprint Planning meeting, the Daily Scrum, and the Sprint Retrospective. The Backlog Refinement meeting covers 3 things. 1. Adding user stories to meet additional requirements. Removing user stories for no longer relevant items. And lastly, prioritizing a list of user stories in the backlog in preparation for the sprint planning meeting. In the sprint planning meeting, items that were not completed in the previous sprint are pulled into the new sprint as long as they're still relevant. And any prioritized items from the backlog are pulled up into the new sprint. A sprint goal is agreed upon, and individuals completing the work give the estimates for what they think they can complete within that sprint time frame, usually 1 to 4 weeks. Depending on your role and your organization, you may have experienced an overload of meetings. And in order to prevent workers from being inundated by meetings and unable to complete their work, a daily morning meeting called the Daily Scrum should be used. In this meeting, each individual will say what they worked on yesterday, what they are planning to work on today, and what blockers they are experiencing. The first two components help align the project team to the sprint goal and keep everyone, quote-unquote, on the same page. Calling out blockers helps facilitate resources to help the individual that is stuck on the task and keep the progress moving. As the 1 to 4 week sprint is completed, the team gets together and conducts a sprint retrospective. Now, this meeting reflects on what went well, what can be improved, and how to proceed with any changes that the team would like to make. This is a crucial meeting as it enables the adaptability that is necessary for a project team to have in the fast-paced IT world. Some organizations also include a sprint review, which involves demonstrating what was completed to the oversight committee or stakeholder team in order to get immediate feedback. Along with this, organizations often include a release planning meeting to prepare for deploying the approved work to the actual end users of the work. This cycle of meetings and work is completed repeatedly throughout the executing phase until everything is complete. Let's take a step back and discuss how this cyclical agile flow fits into our overall project. As we discussed previously, the user stories feed from the planning phase into the sprint cycle in the executing phase. From here, the stories flow through Backlog Refinement, Sprint Planning, Daily Scrum, and the Sprint Retro until they are finished. Once the user stories are completed, they flow into the controlling and closing phases. This cycle contrasts slightly with the tiered and sequential nature of waterfall project management. Utilizing Scrum and Agile project management in this way can be a bit tricky, but having the user stories be created in a waterfall fashion and then flow into the cyclical sprint to be completed, and then thrown back into waterfall when you are controlling, helps smooth the transition a bit. Along with this, the actual deployment of the completed work can be handled in an agile way or a more traditional waterfall approach. The completed work can be deployed as it's ready, released in small batches, or grouped together for one large release. The only caveat to this flexibility is that each release should be consistent. It is not recommended to switch back and forth between immediate releases and then maybe have one large release, as the continuity and rhythm of the project team can be disrupted by these drastic changes, in the same way that the length of sprints should remain consistent. We have now officially covered the executing phase as well as Scrum Sprints. The flow from planning to executing to controlling is an important one. Using Scrum Sprints to efficiently complete work and adapt to the changing environment is what the executing phase is all about. From here, we will talk about some of the trickier pieces of project management in the controlling phase. Thanks for watching the video, and we will see you next time.